There is a strange comfort in believing that evil announces itself. We tell stories of dangerous people with cold eyes and cruel smiles. We imagine them always hiding in the shadows, waiting to strike, easily recognizable by the darkness they carry. But history rarely works that way. Many of the people responsible for the most horrifying acts on record looked completely ordinary. They were teachers. They were parents. They went to the grocery store, worried about their bills, and clocked into regular jobs. This presents a disturbing realization. The boundary dividing a normal citizen from a cruel perpetrator is thinner than we want to believe. Cruelty is rarely the result of a single, sudden decision. It is a slow psychological process. Step by step, we can trace exactly how a normal mind is systematically dismantled until the unacceptable becomes invisible. Understanding this process forces us to abandon our comforting distance. We are forced to investigate the psychology of ordinary evil and ask one highly uncomfortable question. Under the right conditions, could it happen to you? The descent usually begins with something deeply ingrained in our society: obedience. From our earliest years, we are taught to listen to teachers, respect leaders, and defer to those in charge. Take a look at this visual hierarchy flowchart. Notice how the smaller individual node sits below the larger authority node. When a person in power asks us to do something uncomfortable, we tend to shift the burden of responsibility upward. The moral weight transfers away from the individual, and a highly dangerous justification takes place. I was only following orders. Alone, many people might hesitate, but human beings are tribal creatures, driven by a deep need for belonging and safety in numbers. Psychologists call this social conformity. The pressure to fit in, to avoid the fear of exclusion, is immense. Notice how the individual node changes to match the surrounding group. The desire for approval easily overpowers a personal moral compass. When everyone around you appears certain, staying silent becomes the path of least resistance. Crowds strip away individual accountability, making agreement the default state and allowing cruelty to become a routine occurrence. Moral compromises are rarely made in total isolation. They are built, facilitated, and rapidly accelerated by the combined social pressure. Psychologists describe this as gradual moral disengagement. One uncomfortable decision leads to another, and slowly a person's baseline for what feels acceptable shifts entirely. To cope with these shifting morals, people instinctively alter the way they speak. They change their language to rationalize their actions, putting psychological distance between themselves and the harm they are participating in. This often takes a specific tactic, dividing the world into two distinct groups. Labels appear, separating us from them. The outsider is no longer a neighbor. They are reframed as an immediate threat. Dehumanizing labels serve a very specific function. They strip away empathy. By reducing humans to abstract symbols or enemies, standard moral rules collapse. Fear replaces compassion, making harsh actions feel necessary for survival. Physical atrocities do not materialize out of thin air. They are always preceded by rhetorical violence. The process begins with words, ideas, and the deliberate, systematic removal of empathy. As empathy disappears and societal fear rises, individuals become highly vulnerable to manipulation. Systems are established that turn extreme, harmful actions into ordinary, everyday tasks. This brings us to a terrifying concept known as the banality of evil. Ultimate cruelty rarely features dramatic music or explosive villainy. Often, it looks exactly like this: quiet, administrative paperwork, a rhythmic, mechanical motion executed by people simply clocking in and doing their jobs. Because the actions are bureaucratic and routine, the overarching harm becomes invisible to the people pushing the paper. They are separated from the final outcome, focused only on following the established system. That is the ultimate danger of systemic evil. It feels boring. It allows ordinary people to execute horrors without ever feeling like monsters because they believe they are simply doing what is expected of them. The comforting lie that evil is obvious falls apart when we look closely at history. Becoming a monster is not a sudden, dramatic transformation. It is a slow, quiet erosion of boundaries. But recognizing this psychological vulnerability is not a reason for despair. Acknowledging our capacity for harm does not mean humanity is doomed to commit it. We are equally capable of courage, of selfless sacrifice, and of deep compassion. Naming these psychological pressures, identifying the exact moment fear or obedience begins to steer our choices, creates a friction point. It provides a brief window to question our actions before the momentum of the group or the system takes over. Systemic evil relies on ordinary people underestimating their own vulnerability. It thrives in silence and routine. When we assume that we are immune to conformity, we give those systems the exact conditions they need to take root. Maintaining a rigorous, uncompromising awareness of our smallest moral compromises serves as a personal guardrail. Systems of cruelty rely on the moments we forget how fragile our own morality can be. Resisting that momentum begins by refusing to look away.